the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Ukraine. According to media, the Ukrainians intensifying the mobilization process. Ukraine plans to reduce mobilization deferments and find 1 million draft dodgers. Such discussions are underway in the Rada. Stronger mechanisms for deserters are being discussed and may be introduced. Whether such a number of deferments is necessary will be analyzed and a reduction will be implemented. So another important update on this matter was published yesterday in the evening. According to Yuri Kasyanov, military officer, mobilization is key in Kiev is intensifying on the streets. There are more recruiters and in some places they even block major roads. According to him, he had only seen such raids in Kharkiv before. Kasyanov also stated that according to his information, the mobilization plan has reportedly been increased from 30 to 35,000 people per month. So the Ukrainians are intensifying the mobilization process, and the question is why the Ukrainians are doing this. Either the Ukrainians are planning to carry out another counter-offensive operation with the purpose to force the Russians to fall back from the major directions like the Zaporozhye direction or the Konstantinovka or the Slavic directions, or the Ukrainians are preparing themselves before the beginning of the Russian major offensive operation in the area of the siege of Zaporozhye, because they understand that the Russians concentrated huge forces and the Ukrainians need also huge forces with the purpose to slow down the Russians. So which means that the spring and the summer military campaigns are going to be very, very hot and very, very difficult for both the Russians and the Ukrainians. Also, overnight, both the Russians and the Ukrainians continued attacking each other with drones and missiles. The Ukrainians published several videos of how they were attacking objects of air defense infrastructure of the Russian Federation in the Kherson region. A lot of drones were used, a lot of vehicles were damaged and destroyed. The Russians from their side were attacking the Odessa region, trying to pin down and to destroy as many as possible launching sites that Ukrainians used to attack in the southern, in the direction of the southern regions of the Russian Federation. Furthermore, explosions were recorded in the northeastern part of Kharkiv region, where we can see how the Russians, as a result of reconnaissance operation, managed to discover a temporary deployment point of the armored forces of Ukraine, and then the Russians began bombing and attacking this territory with a significant number of drones. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction, where both the Russians and the Ukrainians continue their offensives. And the Russians, during the previous days more precisely, managed to improve their positions in the area of the settlement of Takmachka. This video was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and here we can see how Ukrainians were attacking a sabotage and reconnaissance group of the armored forces of the Russians that were trying to cut a barbed wire. So the Ukrainians attacked these two soldiers, who was tasked to create a corridor, most likely in this area, with the purpose to continue offensive operation in the northern direction. Furthermore, pro-Ukrainian sources published an update. According to this update, the Russians also shortened the distance to the settlement of Gulyai-Polska from the southeast. So the pro-Ukrainian sources expanded the gray zone in this area. Both updates are telling us just one thing, that now the Russians are trying to increase the pressure on the Ukrainian positions from the south in the direction of the settlements of Novoselovka and Gulyai-Polska, and the Russians are keeping advancing in the same direction from the east. The Russians will try to establish complete control over the territory before the beginning of the battle for the city of Orekhov, and this offensive operation, Novoselovka-Gulyai-Polska offensive operation, is going to start obviously within hours. From the other side, we continue receiving updates, sometimes archived updates, of how Ukrainians were counterattacking the Russians in the northern Zaporozhye direction. During the previous night, another video was published by pro-Russian source, and here we can see how Ukrainians using infantry fighting carrier were trying to break through Russian defense. They were moving using vehicle. The Russians were attacking this vehicle with the shotgun rifle, with rifles, with FPV drones, and the Russians attacked and damaged this vehicle significantly. The vehicle was forced to stop and the infantry landed somewhere at this point. So based on this video, we expanded the gray zone because there are still Russian soldiers to the north, but now we start receiving proofs that Ukrainians managed to approach the Uspienovka agglomeration from the northwest. So based on this video, we expanded the gray zone and we added additional, let's say, territories either under complete control of the armored forces of Ukraine or under complete control of the Russian forces. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Konstantinovka direction, where the Russians are keeping advancing in the Drushkovka area. According to different sources, the Russians during the previous days managed to improve their position significantly. For example, this is the end of the 18th of March, this is the 19th of March, and this is the beginning of the 20th of March. According to these updates, the Russians answered the settlement of Priut, and the Russians are keeping advancing further in the northern direction with the purpose to force the Ukrainians to fall back towards the settlement of Tarskoye. As for the settlement of Tarskoye, the Russians during the previous 24 hours attacked this territory with artillery and with drones, trying to slow down and to pin down the Ukrainian reinforcements and reserves that the Ukrainians are trying to redeploy in the southern direction with the purpose to stabilize the situation around the village of Priut. So there are very heavy clashes in this area, and the Russians are keeping advancing further. At the same time, the Ukrainians during the previous days, according to different sources, carried out several counterattacks in the direction of the city of Chasiv Yar. As of now, we don't have maps to make adjustments or videos that can confirm, but the sources are saying that the Ukrainians managed to improve their position significantly in the direction of the city of Chasiv Yar, and that the territory, let's say between the Shevchenko micro district and the settlement of Chervona, is already under complete control of the armed forces of Ukraine. So this is the situation in this area, and by these attacks, the Ukrainians are trying to ruin the Russia's plans to take the settlement of Konstantinovka in pincers. As you can see, the Russians are trying to improve their positions from the west of the settlement of Konstantinovka with the purpose to cut the main logistic lines from the west, and at the same time the Russians during the previous days were trying to do the same from the east, but the Ukrainians managed to regroup themselves to counterattack and to restore control over the territories the Ukrainians lost during the previous battles. So we see that the clashes for Konstantinovka continue, and we see that these clashes are very difficult for both the Russians and the Ukrainians.
Uanset om du vil shoppe de nyeste trends eller velkendte klassikere inden for beauty, træning, velvære og børn og forældre, finder du det hele i Matas.
Watch what nail polish actually does to your toenail fungus. It's kind of surprising, but fungal spores are 1,000.
Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the European Union. During the previous nights, we received lots of very interesting updates. The most important is that European leaders tried for 1 hour and 1.5 hours to convince Orban to lift the veto on a 90 billion euro loan for Ukraine. Moreover, following the outcome of the European Council summit, Prime Minister Fico stated that Slovakia is joining the blockade. Italian Prime Minister Meloni told European Union leaders that she understands Orban's positions, and the Orban's positions is very simple. He wants to receive Russian oil despite the conflict between